Fable 5 scores 80.3% on Subway eBench Pro, while Claude Opus 4.8 sits at 69.2%. But Fable 5 costs exactly double per token. That gap compounds fast, and if you're running serious agent workloads, you're paying twice as much for every single call. Both models are live right now, and people are picking between them every day. So I went through official pricing pages, Anthropic's model cards, and independent benchmark runs from artificial analysis, comparing Claude Opus 4.8 versus Fable 5 across 5 head-to-head tests to see who actually wins. The final score ends up tied 2-2 with one draw, which means the decision comes down to one thing: whether your workload is big enough to justify that double price tag. And we'll get to exactly what that threshold looks like. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. So let's not waste any time. I went through every number both companies will actually stand behind, and where the evidence stops, I say so. No cherry picking, just source data and an honest read on which model fits which job. You've probably heard both tools are great at coding, and yeah, they are. But if you're running a production agent that fires hundreds of calls a day, the wrong pick doesn't just hurt quality, it doubles your bill or leaves real bugs unflagged. That's who this comparison is for: builders with real workloads and real cost constraints. Test 1, hallucination and reasoning accuracy. The day your model confidently tells you something wrong, you ship it, a customer hits it, and you spend 2 days tracking down a bug that never should have existed. So I looked at the AA Omniscience benchmark, which scores both accuracy and how often a model just makes stuff up. What surprised me here is the nuance. Fable 5 hits 61% accuracy on AA Omniscience and scores a 40 on the index, versus Claude Opus 4.8's 46.6% accuracy and 27.4 index score. But Opus 4.8's lower accuracy isn't really a failure, it abstains when it's unsure, which is actually the safer behavior. I couldn't find Fable 5's hallucination rate anywhere. Fable 5 takes this one on raw accuracy, 61% to 46.6%, and that puts Fable 5 up 1-0. Opus 4.8's abstention behavior didn't close the index gap as much as I thought it might, but Fable 5's lead is clear enough that the benchmark goes to Fable 5. Test 2, price to performance. A solo dev running an agent loop that fires 1,000 calls a day is looking at a real dollar difference every single month, depending on which model they pick. The number itself is the story: $5 per million input tokens versus $10. That's not a rounding error. I pulled the official pricing pages and it's clean. Claude Opus 4.8 is $5 input and $25 output per million tokens, while Fable 5 runs $10 input and $50 output. That's exactly half the cost across the board. And on Pro and Max subscription plans, Fable 5 burns credits at double the rate of Opus 4.8, which is community reported but pretty widely confirmed. Claude Opus 4.8 wins price to performance, and that ties the score at 1 each. Going in, I thought the gap might be 20 or 30%, but it's a full 2-to-1 cost ratio on every single token, which is way harder to ignore than I thought. Test 3, code quality and bug detection. 80.3% on Subway eBench Pro is the number I kept coming back to, because that benchmark uses real-world GitHub issues, not toy problems. If a model misses bugs, on that, it's missing bugs in your code base too. And that's where the double price tag either pays for itself or it doesn't. The gap here is pretty big. Fable 5 hits 80.3% on SWE Bench Pro versus Claude Opus 4.8's 69.2%, so that's 11 points. On Frontier Code Diamond, Fable 5 nearly doubles Opus 4.8, 29.3% versus 13.4%. The one thing Opus 4.8 has going for it is that it's 4 times better than its predecessor at flagging its own code flaws, which is a vendor claim, so take it with a grain of salt. Fable 5 takes code quality, and that puts Fable 5 ahead 2-1. Opus 4.8's self-flagging improvement just doesn't move the needle enough in the overall picture because the raw benchmark gap is too wide, 11 points on Subway Bench Pro and double on Frontier Code Diamond, for Opus 4.8 to claim this one. 2 tests left, and test 4 is a tie, and test 5 on safety and data retention is the one that could actually flip the whole decision for anyone running a production system with compliance requirements. Don't skip it. Test 4, task complexity handling. You've probably heard that Fable 5 is great for big open-ended tasks, but the real question is whether that advantage holds when you're running a mix of simple and complex work all day. Because if it doesn't, you're overpaying on the easy stuff and that adds up fast. What I found is that these two models are really built for different things. Claude Opus 4.8 has a 5-level effort dial, so you can right-size the reasoning depth and cost per call, which is super useful for routine production agents. Fable 5 uses adaptive thinking and is the clear pick for big, ambiguous walk-away assignments, but for simple tasks, it's genuinely overkill. This one's a draw. Neither model wins task complexity outright because they're solving different problems, and that's the honest read. Score stays at Fable 5-2, Claude Opus 4.8 1 tied. They're just aimed at different ends of the complexity spectrum, and I don't think one definitively beats the other here. Test 5, safety guardrails and data retention. A 30-day mandatory data hold might sound like a minor detail, until your legal team asks where your customer prompts are being stored, and the answer is somewhere outside your control for a month. That's a real compliance problem for a lot of teams. So here's what I found. Claude Opus 4.8 supports zero data retention full stop. Fable 5 requires a 30-day hold, which is community reported but pretty consistent across sources. On top of that, Fable 5 routes flagged requests in sensitive categories like cyber and bio back to Opus 4.8 anyway, and Opus 4.8 adds refusal categories in its stop details, which is a more transparent honesty posture. Claude Opus 4.8 takes safety and data retention, which ties the overall score at 2 wins each with 1 drop. The Fable 5 fallback detail kind of caught me off guard, where flagged requests route back to Opus 4.8 anyway, and that tells you something about where Anthropic sees Opus 4.8's strengths. All right, so where does Claude Opus 4.8 clearly win? Price, full stop. It's $5 input and $25 output per million tokens, exactly half of Fable 5. Zero data retention versus Fable 5's mandatory 30-day hold. A 5-level effort dial that lets you right-size cost to the task, and a safer honesty posture, abstaining on uncertain questions rather than guessing. And here's where Fable 5 clearly beats Claude Opus 4.8. It hits 80.3% on SWE Bench Pro. That's 11 points higher. On AA Omniscience Accuracy, it's 61% versus 46.6. On Frontier Code, Diamond, it more than doubles Opus 4.8 at 29.3% versus 13.4%. And for big, ambiguous, open-ended assignments where you can hand it a goal and walk away, Fable 5 is the right tool. Fable 5 looked like it was going to run away with this, but the final score is 2-2 with a tie, and that makes the decision rule pretty clean. If you need daily agent workloads and cost control, Claude Opus 4.8 is your pick, half the price, zero retention. If the task is big enough to justify that 2-to-1 cost gap, and you need that 80.3% SWE Bench Pro ceiling, reach for Fable 5. 2 times the price. Make the task earn it. I ran Claude Opus 4.8 against GPT-4. Won next. And what's interesting is the price gap flips in a different direction and the code quality story gets way more complicated. That comparison is already on the channel if you want to see how Opus 4.8 holds up against a model from a completely different family.